state representatives to come and speak with us. And Karen Brownlee, at the last moment this morning, was not feeling well and was losing her voice. So, Representative Rachel Baker, House District 27, is going to carry the water for us. I looked at the shape of the districts. Does anybody know they're in her district? I think Dan way back there is in Rachel's district.
No, I'm in Karen's.
Oh. Well, anyway. So we know who's showing up tonight. And I did ask Rachel and Karen to tell us in their own introduction of themselves what led them to run for office, and then what bills, issues, and committees they're working on. After that, we have a couple of starter questions for them about broad issues, and then you all will be invited to ask any questions or make any comments about what goes on. Okay? So, Representative Baker.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me good? All right. So thanks so much for having me, and thanks for coming out on this cold, chilly, our first cold night. I am in my second term, my third year at the Statehouse, and what brought me to this? So I really was not involved in politics. I was a good voter, but beyond that, I was not involved in politics at all. Have a career as a nurse and a PhD prepared nurse, and direct a nursing research program for a hospital system here. And I would say a few things, but probably during COVID was the biggest part where kind of an aha moment happened to me that I realized how important policy is in health of communities. So we do a really good job if someone has a stroke or a heart attack, providing acute episodic care at the hospital. We don't do as great a job creating communities where people are healthy and prevent that in the first place. And so I kind of had this aha moment, and in COVID I saw how I was able to really concretely see the difference between how hospital systems looked at data and made their hospital policies based on changing data, and how our state or my local school board made decisions, and I saw a big difference. And I thought, someone who knows how to use evidence and make evidence-based informed decisions should be at these tables. I had no clue what I was getting into. I would not recommend that to anyone, but ran for office, ran for a primary, had a primary and then a general, and won them both. And figured it out as I went along. So I think there were some positives from that. I didn't know what to expect. I came in very open to learning, open to figuring out how things work, and really found that what I thought, that using a data-driven way of approaching things I was able to do some good work there, even being in the super minority, even being a freshman last year. I think I've been on kind of a mission ever since this to talk to nurses, because I think nurses and healthcare professionals have some skills that are really needed there. And so I found that being able to create rapport and relationships with colleagues that sometimes think really different than me, but being able to be honest and truthful and build some sort of trust has been able to make me successful there, which has been great. My first election, I kind of thought, well, if I win, that would be cool. If I don't, maybe it's a blessing in disguise. My second election, I really wanted to win because I saw that I could make change and I could pass bills and I could make a difference. So my last election was very stressful, but I got back, and I'm excited to be here. Committees I sit on. remembering all the questions. So my very first year, I sat on a lot of kind of committees that they put freshmen on because they need people on them, things like aviation, things I knew nothing about. But I learned a lot about drones and learned a lot. This year, I think I've shown my value and have been able to be on lots of really important committees related to healthcare. So I sit on the House Health Committee, House Finance Committee, and then I'm ranking member of the House Medicaid Committee. So all health and health financing related, which is great. I'm a little bit disconnected from some of the other committees until bills make it through and get to me, but health stuff I am all about. So I love to be able to actually use my expertise and the skills I've learned and how to make some difference. And the last thing was bills. Bills I'm excited about. So the last General Assembly, I was able to pass several bills as a joint sponsor in the super minority, which was pretty unheard of, and bills that were really good bills. So things like adoption, modernization. So I partnered with a colleague from the Republican Party, and it was kind of the perfect issue. She was looking for someone to do a bipartisan bill on updating adoption, and I built my family through adoption, so it was a personal interest of mine. She was adopted as an infant, and so we partnered, and she looked through the part of the code related to private infant adoptions, and I looked through the part of the code of foster care and adoption, and we updated everything, made adoption much more efficient, keeping guardrails, making sure kids are safe, but taking a lot of the unnecessary bureaucratic parts out of it. And we were able to get that passed, which from personal experience will definitely get kids in homes faster, into permanent, nurturing, good homes. So that was an exciting bill. I also passed one last year setting kind of a minimum, setting a bar for healthcare systems and hospitals at what the minimum they had to provide for safety for their workers to prevent workplace violence in hospital systems, which anyone who works in that field knows nurses and all frontline healthcare providers face violence at our workplace all the time. It's leading into burnout, and nurses are actually have the highest amount of violence at the workplace from any other profession. People are usually surprised to hear, more than police, more than anyone else. So putting some minimum standards for the workplace. So those two are my big two from last year that were passed. This year I have some bills looking at prescription drug pricing and rebates that would impact everyone who gets any prescription filled in a pharmacy. So that one would be great. I have a bill that would license medical daycares in Ohio. That's the one I'm the most excited. It's very close to being done. It's over in the Senate, and it's final push. I'm hoping we get there. But that one looks at, in Ohio, we don't have daycares for kids with medical complexities. So think of kids with like a trach, a breathing ventilator, a G-tube. Once they get school age, where our public schools are required to provide schooling, but there's nothing until kindergarten. When I worked at Cincinnati Children's as a bedside nurse, we saw lots of kids who lived all over the country that would fly in for their specialists, and a lot of times they'd eventually move here if they needed lots of specialists, and the doctors would often refer them to move to Kentucky because they had medical daycare in Kentucky. So we're drawing people to us, but then having them live out of state is a little crazy. So House Bill 141 would license medical daycare and provide funding for daycare for kids with medical complexity. There are really cool models that are inclusive of kids, typically developing kids and kids with complexity. So parents that have 3 kids, say, send all their kids to the same preschool. The siblings can see families like theirs, normalizes their family experience. Just a great model. We have really good examples in Northern Kentucky. So we are really close to having that in Ohio. And so that's one I'm super excited about. And I think that was the last question, right?
Yes, you did. So I went on the webpage for the Ohio legislature because I'm in the same condition you were before you ran. I didn't know anything about how it works. And there are 36 standing committees in the legislature right now. And so I kind of wanted to know a little bit more about how this works before we start asking you about what the Democrats are being able to do, how they might work to work through some of the issues that we're all concerned about. So is the majority of the legislative work done through committees? And what kinds of opportunities do you have to learn what others of either party are working on?
Really good question. So yes, all of the bill, like the majority of the work of bills happens in committees. Any one of us who introduces a bill, it gets assigned to a committee, and that's where its work will happen. So this is a really, really important factor. So I've always done hospital administration. I just kind of thought that bills like happened in order. They're all given a number, so I thought like Bill 1 would be heard, and then Bill 2, and no, it does not work like that. Instead, your bill gets assigned to a committee, and that committee chairperson decides when to put that bill on the agenda. So if they like the idea, they might put it on the agenda next week. If you introduce it by a certain date, like May something, they're required to give you one hearing, but they might give you that hearing in December 30th, so that there's no time to actually have it passed. So the chair of the committee that your bill gets assigned to is very important. That person holds all power of your bill. So there's lots of lobbying and negotiations on where bills get assigned. Once the bill gets assigned to the committee, then really it's those committee members that you should be lobbying. So people always said, call your representative, which is great. But if people are upset about a bill that would limit black crows in some agriculture place, if I'm your rep, you can call and tell me about it. But if I'm not on that committee, there's nothing I can do about black crows until it comes to the House. So really what you want to do is look online at ohiohouse.gov, look at what committee the bill you're interested in is assigned to, and that it'll list all the reps that are on that committee. Those are the people you want to be lobbying. Let your rep know so that they know what you're interested in, but lobbying those people, because through the committee process is where we can give amendments to bills, we can make changes, we can make tweaks. So the committee chair assigns the first meeting, the first hearing, which is where the legislator gives an overview of what their bill is and why they're introducing it. It's usually 5 or 10 minutes, and that's the whole hearing. And that is all that's required constitutionally to do. So if the chair doesn't like it, they'll just never schedule it again, and that's how a bill dies in committee. So sometimes we need advocates to be emailing the chair saying, we want more hearings on that bill is important, putting pressure on that person. If they schedule a second hearing, it'll usually be for proponents. So that's where we get people who support it to come in and talk, write letters in. That's a great time to advocate. And then sometimes the chair decides that's all. If you can get a third one, that's where you can get opponents, get the people writing in who are against it. And after you've had 3 hearings, the chair can decide to have a vote or not. So that's where you want to be advocating for a vote if you want to vote. So there's lots of ability of the chair to just fill up their agenda or to cancel meetings and just never hear bills, which I had no idea. I mean, I really thought it was just a fair process where we listen to each bill in order and listen to both sides and we vote. No, there are pressure point people who decide the process. So the first pressure point you're going to hit is who is the committee chair that the bill is assigned to. We know when we introduce kind of controversial bills, if it goes to certain committees, I know it was sent there to die because I know the person doesn't like it, who's in charge. Or alternatively, it can go to a committee with a really nice cooperative chair, and I know it was put there to get through. So you can tell a lot by where it gets assigned. If you can get a vote in committee, well, first of all, you can also be negotiating amendments. That's where the Democrats can do some work. The committees are all set up in the same ratio as the House. So there's about 2/3 Republicans, 1/3 Democrats on each committee. But sometimes we can do some things like introduce amendments to make things a little less bad, to put a little bit of cushion in exchange for votes. So there are times that you'll see things tweaked a little bit, and maybe people not voting on the best thing in the world, but we made it less bad in exchange for a vote, and it was going to pass anyway. So there's lots of that kind of negotiating going on, which is kind of the yucky part of politics. So if you get all the way through committee, it gets voted out, then you've got your next pressure point person. The Speaker of the House can decide to bring it to the floor or never to bring it to the floor. So you could get all the way through committee, get it passed, and the Speaker can decide never to call up for a House vote, and then it dies. I don't know what they call that, dies out of committee. If the Speaker does get it through, then you want to be talking to your rep about how you want him to vote on it. If it passes the House, then it goes over to the Senate, exact same thing. Senate committee, that person has all the ability to schedule or not, so you got to go through 3 hearings again. And then Senate President decides if it goes to the floor there or not, and then the governor signs it or not. So your committee chairs in both houses and your Speaker and your President and then the governor are like your 5 pressure point people. And if one of those people doesn't like your bill, it can be completely held up by one person. So lots of relationship building, negotiating, figuring out what's important to those people and what you can put in your bill that will make them feel included and part of it. There's definitely an art to it. It's not factual based and voting, there's some of that, but a little bit of an art to it. But committees are absolutely where it all happens. So I'll get calls like, vote no on this bill that's coming to the House, which is great, but usually if a bill is going to come to the House floor, the Speaker already knows he has enough votes. There's no chance. We often put amendments up, and they're often tabled. Like, there's not much you can do. By the time it gets to the House floor, it is pretty much a done deal. It's much easier to kill something or amend it in committee. Unfortunately, there's so much going on, it's hard to know what's happening in committee. Like, you often don't know until it's about to get to the floor, at least the general people. So, and us, with 36 committees all hearing a lot of bills, it's a team sport. I can't watch all 36 committees, so I rely on my colleagues and some of the other committees to be able to say, this bill is bubbling up in my committee, it looks like it's going to pass, we're going to need some help on it, or get ready for it coming to the floor. So I kind of take the lead on the health-related ones and let people know when troubling things or good things are coming up, and rely on my colleagues to do the same in their topic areas.
Right. So I'm going to skip to a question because this will probably be a quick answer that relates to that. Did the Democratic caucus, did the Democrats caucus and agree to the redistricting maps designed by the Republicans? Or how was that handled? Did you know it was just going to get done before you?
I'm on the hot spot on this one. We caucused the night before. I'm trying to remember. It was a 10 or 10:30 at night caucus we were called to, and we were told what our leadership was going to do. We did not vote. We did not have a discussion. We had a discussion about why. I did not get a vote on what I would want to do in that situation. Our leadership decided what they were voting, and they voted.
I thought that would be short.
Could you define who just a couple people?
Yeah, so the redistricting went first, I forget the first step. The first step was not the Ohio Redistricting Commission. What was before that? Yeah, it didn't make it through the September, whatever happened in September. They didn't do anything. They didn't even call a map up. Right. They didn't even call a map up to vote on. Okay, now I'm remembering. Gosh, this is only like a month ago. It's so much has happened. So that was September 30th. We had until September 30th to pass a bipartisan map. No map was called up, so it got moved to the Ohio Redistricting Commission. That consisted of, on the Democrat side, our leader in the House, Dunny Isaacson, and our leader in the Senate, Nikki Antonio, and then people from the House and the Senate on the Republican side, and governor appointees. So it was more Republican, 5 Republican, 2 Democrats, and so they proposed a map, and in order to call it bipartisan, both of the Democrats would have to vote yes on it by October 30th, 31st, something like that. And then we would have that bipartisan map until 2030. If they had not voted on it, it would have gone to the legislature, which would have had until November 30th to pass along party lines and a map. The threat that I heard was that they were going to pass a 13-2 map in November, and our leadership decided to vote in favor of it, which made it a bipartisan supported map. Yep, Rep. Isaacson and Senator Antonio.
The 2 that were on the Senate.
Yes, the 2. And that I don't know how the Senate decided, but on the House, we were told about it the night before, but we were not asked to vote or to give input about how we should vote. It was told to us. Thank you.
Now on to the biggies.
Well, okay.
All right, good. So, how are the Democrats in the Statehouse working together to protect the rights of the people of Ohio from the attacks on our voting rights, specifically Senate Bill 153, Senate Bill 293, as well as the civil rights that voters have worked for via constitutional amendment and then have been thwarted in various ways?
I feel like these are the most important fights that we're doing. The redistricting fights and the voter disenfranchisement, I don't even know what to call it, but all the attacks on voters' rights, it's horrible, and they just keep coming. I am not on any of the committees that do those, but I would say it is one of the topics that's at the forefront of our caucus discussions, and I think everyone realizes the urgency of pushing back on these. At the same time, I think that we need to be working in our communities to engage voters. I think, we're restricting voter rights, and people are feeling, myself included, like just disengaging sometimes. It's like the whole thing's rigged. Why do we do this? And that's a horrible. I don't really feel that way, but I understand why people do sometimes. And so we are fighting it with everything we can fight it. I would say we are trying anytime we can in that committee process to make things a little less bad, to tweak things, make amendments as we can make them. But we're in the super minority, and this is one of the things the majority wants to do, because I think, there's, I don't know why. I know why, but I think really what we need to do is start to win more seats, to have the ability to not veto the governor, to have the ability to start to make things need to be bipartisan, to need some of our votes to get things passed. And I think at that point, there will be some more people on the Republican Party that are willing to vote outside their party when they can see that we could win. I think it's hard to ask people to vote outside and to be other than their party when they're still not going to win, even if they vote for us. But if we can get our numbers good enough that we can get some people to pull over, when I look, I'm very hopeful after this last election. We flipped typically red areas in suburban areas around Ohio. You know, nationally, there was a lot of good news, but even in Ohio, we flipped lots of these suburban areas that had been a little bit trending and then really did a good flip. So that makes me really hopeful for 2026. I think there's a handful, maybe even like 5 or 6 seats that are gettable in the state house if we continue this trend, if we hold on to this momentum and keep showing up. And I think it's really, really important for our Democrat reps to be out in their districts, out in showing a different way, showing that you'll come to town halls and talk to people, showing that you'll come to places that are more hostile and talk to people, showing that you'll meet with people at the coffee shop, showing people a different kind of representation to keep people engaged and to flip some of these seats. Because, I mean, when it gets, we can do what we can do to try to hold things off, to try to tweak things, but when it gets down to a floor vote, we just don't have the numbers to hold stuff back. And I think I would say that I feel that there's a point of us being there. Someone's asked me that before, like, is there a point? Aren't you just like losing every vote? I would say that there is stuff we're able to hold off. There's things we're able to make less negative. And that's kind of what keeps me going, is what can I make a little bit better that's about to pass anyway? What can we hold off? And sometimes those aren't things that we can go to the paper and say, your Democrat just saved this, because the second we do that, they're going to put it back in the Senate. So there's no gloating about it. But there are some things that, you know, I'm happy to talk to people about that I feel like we have been able to make a difference. On the really big things, we just don't have the numbers. I mean, to be brutally honest, we need to flip some more seats and get more of a balance in the state house.
So do you think those two bills that are attacking voter rights, I think one parallels the SAVE Act? I forget, there's two of them, but one talks about proof of citizenship to vote. One talks about limiting the time you can get the mail-in ballots back. There's more in there. Might be stuff about drop boxes.
Yeah.
Do you think those are going to pass before 2026 election? Probably not.
I know. I can't tell you for sure. I have not been in any of the committees that they're being discussed. I think a big pushback is what it's doing to our veterans' ability to vote, you know, and but I would say things like IDs to do things, cracking down on whatever, you know, that is the rhetoric up there. So I would imagine as we get closer, I think as we get closer to 26, they're going to be nervous for their own seats, and there's going to be a lot of anything they can do to make people nervous to vote, not want to vote, not want to come down to turn out. You know, I've heard about the drop box limits. I am sure before 26 there'll be more things, and we'll be sure to let you all know and try to keep pressure on. I would say it can feel kind of like, you know, especially when you're leaving messages and emails and you're not getting responses, like, does this even matter? I would say it absolutely matters. Like, the days that people are like, I can't even pick up my phone is off the hook. The libraries are really good at doing that. But just so many calls that you're flooding people's phones and emails, it does get people's attention. So I would say doing that, especially around this voter, it's harder for people to vote for things when there's an entire room protesting it. Not that they won't do it, but it's harder. So as hard as we can make this, I think the last thing we want to do is make it easy to do what they're trying to do. So, you know, we will do our part. There's lots of people who've been up at the State House, and I think we just have to keep showing up, and at some point, hopefully, we'll be able to hold off some of this. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so if we should call people that are on the committees that they aren't our representative, will they even acknowledge that exists, since they're not responsible for our vote, or they're not?
Yeah, you don't have to say when you call that you're not in their district. Just say, I'm an Ohio voter. Yeah, I would say I'm an Ohio voter, and I know you're on this committee that's hearing this bill, and make sure you're, you know, the worst thing is when I talk to a colleague and they say, nobody's called me about that one. Like, everybody's fine with it. And I'm like, my phone is flooded. Like, there's no way no one's calling you, you know? So make sure that they can't say that with a straight face. And, you know, if you are calling your rep, then absolutely being like, you are my representative, this is what I want, you know. But if you're not calling your rep, they're still supposed to be representing the people in their committee. So, yeah, absolutely. Because calling me about voter registration is, all these bills is great, and I'm on the same side as you, and when it gets to the House floor, I will vote the way that you're all talking about. But there's nothing I can do. I'm not in that committee to be able, so those people are who you should be calling right now until it gets to the floor, and then you just want to flood everybody.
And one more that's come up recently is, will you address the Democrats' position regarding ICE and the U.S. military policing within Ohio and our Ohio National Guards being posted in other states?
Yeah, this is another one that we're seeing. We're seeing some of these same kind of issues. So we had a bill that looked at what Ohio police have to do to support ICE, what you know, really beyond the scope of what our state is supposed to be doing. I would say we're not seeing a lot except for things around voter registration, Medicaid use. I would say things like that come up, but as far as ICE, we haven't had much that we've been talking about at the Statehouse. There was a bill talking about not obstructing, I don't remember the bill number, it hasn't made it anywhere. So we're really not doing a ton. I would say that's a good thing, because what we're going to do is not helpful. You know, we're not one of these states that's going to protect people. So as much as we can keep this topic out of our Statehouse is a good thing, unfortunately. And I had said that about something else. Someone was like, we're going to have session this week and next week, and then I think we're off until January. And people were like, oh, it must be nice that you're not working. I'm like, it actually is, because when we're working, we're doing bad things. You know, it's actually good. So I feel like the ICE issue is like something we want to keep away from the Statehouse, because if anything, it will enable ICE and not be protecting Ohioans. I would say, like as individual representatives, we've done things. We've been asked, I've written some letters to different courts for specific people in my district who have been detained by ICE. We have worked with our federal congressmen and worked in individual cases to help people, and that has been productive. So kind of on a one-on-one basis, but I would say we're not doing anything, at least so far, bill-wise related to ICE, thankfully.
Rachel first. Thank you so much for being here. It's really marvelous. So two questions. One, on the question of proof of citizenship. Do you know what they're talking about, requiring people to present to prove that they're citizens?
I mean, this is the red meat for saying that illegal people are voting. I mean, which is just crazy. Yeah, I do not know, but it's all, I mean, most of this isn't really founded in an actual concern or problem they're trying to fix. It's red meat for a base.
Because I think the way that's heard by folks is, gee, if I don't have a passport, because folks who are not citizens can get a driver's license, right? So how otherwise would you prove? You have to bring your birth certificate to the board of elections. I mean,
and people don't have all this stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think you're absolutely right that it's really an effort to suppress the vote, because people don't want to risk having a problem, right?
Yeah.
Even though they're fully appropriate and legitimate.
But they know that it affects Republican voters as well. It's not just Democratic voters that don't have birth certificate access or passports.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Do they not think of that, or they don't care?
I think it is, I don't know if they don't care. I think it's honestly a plan to suppress the vote as much as possible. I think that in general, when voting percentages are up, the Democrats are doing better. And I think it's just a numbers game. And that's the part that I don't get on a lot of these bills, not even the voter registration, but some of the ones like Medicaid cuts. I mean, who that is going to hurt is rural hospitals. It's going to hurt. The rural hospitals are such a huge percent of their patient makeup is Medicaid patients. So those patients are not going to be able to get health care. When that happens, the rural hospital is going to go out of business, so everybody in the rural community isn't going to be able to get health care, and that's the workplace for most of the people living in the hospital that are then going to lose their jobs. So, like, I don't understand, you know, and we have done some of that work where when we have a bill, we will bring to representatives, like I made a heat map that had different colors for like what proportion of the people were on Medicaid when we were talking about the Medicaid expansion trigger. And I took it to a colleague and was like, I knew which one was him. I'm like, now remind me, where do you? Oh, that really red spot right there. Like, that's all your people. You know, like really bringing them the numbers for their districts. Most of these policies are hurting our rural areas the most. Our private school vouchers, these rural areas don't have private schools to go to. So if we're underfunding their public schools, where are kids going to get educated? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So I don't understand the reason for suppressing voting in these areas, or cutting Medicaid, or not funding the only school you have in your area. I don't know the long game of that. It doesn't make sense to me.
Along with being a member of both departments, I'm also a member that's here for all of Iowa. And we have a lot of data across the years and it's a spirit. And but that it's interesting what we do lobby days. When I talk to Republicans, talking about Medicare for all, they look at me blankly, like they have no idea what I'm talking about, and they don't really care about what I'm talking about. So my question is, and I haven't had this happen, but other people told me they talk to Democrats and they use those types of bills here. They put a bill up last year, every year for 20 years.
I think they just got sponsored. They just did sponsor testing this year. Yeah.
Some of the Democrats say, we won't pass, I won't put my name on it. Will you explain that logic? I mean, to me, it's either it doesn't pass, if I see that you've got your name on it, I feel like you got my back.
Yeah.
But when you say, I know it's, you know, I won't sign it because I won't be signed or be a sponsor because it's not as bad. I don't understand the logic.
Yeah, so the question is that he's talked with some Democrats that agree with the policy but won't sign on to it because they say it won't pass, I won't put my name on it. That is not how I legislate at all, so I don't understand that rationale. I would say that I have kind of in my mind two different types of bills. I have bills that I want to pass and make a reality in Ohio, and that I think that there is an appetite and a way forward. For every one of those, I always joint sponsor it with a Republican. It will never pass if I don't do that. I need my colleagues. So medical daycare, I'm doing with Cindy Abrams. Share the savings prescriptions, I'm doing with Tim Barhorse. I have a Republican on every one that carries folks from their side. Every bill that I've gotten passed so far has had a Republican joint sponsor, and we know when I talk and when they talk. Like, it is a negotiation, and it's the best ideas. I can write up how I want to describe the bill, and then they say, oh no, my people won't like those words at all. You got to change this to this, and sometimes it's just the words I'm using are off-putting. And I can do the same things when I look at their words. Like, you just lost half my caucus if you say this. Like, and so together we can craft a message that sells the bill and that has part. It's never the way I would do it entirely, but it's a way that will get passed. So I have bills that I want to pass and that I think there's a way forward. And those I always am with Republicans. And I actually don't ask a lot of Democrats to co-sign on to them because I don't want it to be me and a Republican and 25 Democrats, because that also looks like a Democrat bill. So often we don't have co-sponsors, it's just two of us, and we pass them that way. Then I have bills that are statements that I don't have any false belief that they will pass, but I want to make a statement that this is how we could do things and this is how we should do things. So I always drop a bill on gun violence prevention with Cecil Thomas. Two Democrats. That bill was dropped early on. We will probably get a hearing in a year at the very end of the General Assembly. We'll get one. That'll be it. But I can say I have your back. I'm trying. This is a reasonable thing. For things that can't pass, but you support the cause, I don't know why you wouldn't sign on. Yeah, sorry. I'm curious to know who wouldn't and talk to them about it, because maybe they have a reason, but I don't know the reason.
Well, just the second part of it.
You didn't say what your opinion was on redistricting votes on the security. I mean, this has been bannered about, like, you can't, be partisan, and we've got, people are upset about California, people are upset about, what do you think about what the vote was, or how it's been decided? I'm putting you on the spot.
You are putting me on the spot. I wish I had colleagues up here, because I have been greatly urged to be supportive. I was not in all the conversations. From the information I know, I might have made a different decision. I don't know that I support redistricting, whether it's getting one seat for my side or not one seat. I mean, I really think we need to drop. I think that the redistricting commission showed me how much we need legislators out of this, because everybody is looking at what it does for themselves and their people. So this is my politician way of answering and not answering, but I don't know enough to know what I would have done. From what I know, I might have done something different, and I am more than ever thinking we need another ballot initiative that gets this out of the hands of politicians. We are unable to do this fairly. I am now convinced, and I think it needs to be an independent commission. I think that's the only path forward.
And I think, just now people are feeling so strongly that we've got to preserve the positions we have in the Congress. And even Donnie in his explanation said, this is for now, and we've got to fix it for later.
So, I just wanted to say, I looked at shape of Rachel's district and of Karen's district. And both districts are mostly within the 275 corridor. And they're so ridiculously shaped. It just seems so obvious that they're lying. We hear that every day. Well, the representatives are choosing their voters, not the other way around. Well, anyway. Brewster's.
Rachel, I hope this isn't too personal of a question, but you referenced that you're a mom of adopted children, right? And I know that they're international in origin, right? And so I'm just curious about what you as a family have experienced with any interaction with ICE, but most likely interaction of kids in their schools, kids they play soccer with, who are beaten up over because they think that somehow their bad because they aren't looking like themselves, you know, as kids and aunts
Really?
around you. So
Yeah.
just, you know, you've had direct personal experience with what your kids are experiencing. I just love to understand what what's
Yeah.
happening with you and your
I mean,
family.
it does worry me. I mean, I definitely pulled my paperwork together and made sure I had all my citizenship. One of my kids had a little unusual situation, and I went to a judge to make sure we had everything set. You know, to think that I'm even thinking things like that is crazy. But I would say, you know, in our community, we haven't felt anything. You probably remember one of my early race situations. In my very early running, we woke up one morning and I had texts from a bunch of friends that were like, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" I'm like, "Why is everyone texting me? Am I okay? Like, I'm waking up. It's 7:30. I'm fine." And then they were like, "Have you looked outside?" And there were Chinese flags put in a circle around all of our yard signs of my yard sign. And my kids, my youngest was little, and he was like, "Oh, people love us. They love that we're from China." I'm like, "Oh." But I explained to him that usually when people love you, they don't come over at 2 in the morning and leave you. So I had to, you know, explain to him that someone was using our family as, you know, othering us, like these are other people. They're not like the rest of us. I mean, that was the message. But I would say, if anything, that rallied the community so much around us. We're just, I mean, I think it's how I was able to flip this district is we are very embedded in our community. My kids are really involved in our community in sports and orchestra, and volunteering. And so even if people have some of these views, it's not your family, not your kids. And so I could push people on, you know, like, all these people are like my kid, you know, my kids immigrated here, like, and so being able to have some of those conversations with someone that people actually know has been helpful. And my kids learned important lessons about how to push back and about, you know, what those kind of things say about us versus what they say about whoever was sneaking around our house at 2 in the morning. It's kind of gross. So I would say that's really the only big thing we had. My kids have absolutely learned how to stand up for things, how to fight back. The story I tell of when I decided to run, you know, we did a family meeting, because I'm very type A, and I sat everybody down and said, you know, I am going to keep working as a nurse researcher full-time, and I want to run for the Statehouse because I don't like what's happening with your school board, I don't like what's happening in our community, and I talked about why, and I said, but, you know, I'm a single mom, so it's just me and you three, so if I do this, it's going to take some away from you all. So I have to decide, do we want to fight back as a family or do we not? And I see fighting back by running for this seat, but it'll take our whole family to do that. So it's a family decision. I don't, you know. So we went away, everybody thought about it. And then the next day, my kids came back and said, like, we're ready to have family meeting part 2. We've discussed. And they had a sheet of paper, and on it, they'd written what each of them were going to do for us to fight. And they said, we absolutely are going to fight this. We're in one of those school districts that had, like, canceling Diversity Day and just all the stuff against, you know. And so my kids realized that they were one of the few non-white kids in their schools, and that was what we were fighting against. And they had written down, Mom runs for state rep, Audrey drives everybody to practices, which sounds sweet, but she didn't have a car. She actually wanted me to buy her a car, which I did, but she did need a car to drive everyone to practices. So that one's not so sweet. But my son, who is 14 at the time, he's 17 now, said he would cook dinner every night. And he has cooked dinner every night since November 2022. I haven't cooked. Yeah. So every Sunday, he gives me a list of what he wants. I buy all the stuff, and then he cooks dinner every night. Even nights I don't have things, it's his job. And then my youngest takes the dogs on walks and feeds the dog. So all of them said, we will do these things, and you go fight in Columbus. And so we have made it into a family thing, because I knew it was going to take time away. Like every Tuesday night, I stay in Columbus, and my kids get to their sports and they do their homework and they cook dinner and they eat, and go to bed, and they get up and go to school on Wednesday morning. My littlest is a little stinker about that going to school on Wednesday morning. Slept in a few times, but most of the time they do. But that's what they had to do. Like, I can't go up to Columbus and do this if you're all not going to do your part. So they have learned, people have said to me, which also I could go on a whole rant about this because I don't think they asked my male counterparts, how do you come up to Columbus and leave your kids at home? Which I like to respond, how do you? But for me, it has taught my kids so much. Like, I am gone one night a week, and in exchange, we have really solidified Sunday nights. Like, we all have to be home Sunday night, no working, no going with friends, no nothing. I can't, they can't, we're all home. And the rest of the week, everybody has a job, and this is a family effort, and everything I can achieve is because they do their part at home too. So I think they've hit a little bit of it, but if anything, they've learned how to fight back way better, and they're way better at it than me. I take stuff personal, and they're like, come on.
I asked her if she was going to order something to eat when she came in here. She said, no, my son's cooking dinner tonight. And I was impressed with just tonight.
Yeah, he's cooking baby spinach, tomato, gnocchi with ricotta sauce.
Oh, right. Okay. So we're getting a little past 8, unless somebody else has a burning question for Rachel. We might let people make any announcements of events or things they've done that have inspired them, or anything on the topic of our old new democracy.
No, I don't think that's, I have a question. It's a burning question. I get notifications from Planned Parenthood about things that are going on at our Statehouse, and there's a lot of horrible things that are going on. And we just voted, and the voters said what we wanted. Do they not care what we want? Is that precedent? What is it? Because this
House Bill 410.
Well, the Metro Presto one, and then I'm reading about this one that reports Ohio students starting in 3rd grade, but repeated yearly to watch anti-abortion propaganda. Well, why is that inappropriate? I'm a retired teacher. We didn't talk about anything but periods, and that was in 4th grade. So this is just beyond the pale. I don't even understand.
There is absolutely a new attack. There's a new tactic on a lot of these anti-abortion legislators who before were trying to attack reproductive rights. Now that it's in the Constitution, we're in a position where they aren't able to outlaw in Ohio. So what they're trying to do is change the public view on it by things like propaganda videos early in school. There is a bill that would that attacks. Here's a good example of things we can. Here's a good example. So there's a bill that has the Ohio Department of Health label drugs as dangerous drugs, where there's 5% or more adverse events. And when you are prescribed an adverse event or a dangerous drug, you have to have an in-person visit with a doctor and all this stuff happen. I'm like, what problem is this solving, right? The problem is that people are using telehealth visits to get medication-assisted abortions. So they're saying that these medications have these horrible side effects. The research they're using, I haven't yet to see actual research, but they're saying if you can find any research that shows 5% or more of adverse events, it can be called a dangerous drug. Aspirin has more than 5%. I mean, we have the retailers come in and talk about ibuprofen and aspirin. It'll have to come off the shelf, and you'll have to have an inpatient visit with a doctor to have those if we're really doing this. So they're trying things like that. The other bill to keep your eye on is House Bill 410, which would, right now, Medicaid and public tax dollars cannot be used to pay for abortion. That's already the law. But 410 says that Medicaid can't be used at any organization that provides abortion. So like the Planned Parenthood satellites that do birth control and STD testing and cancer screening and wellness checks cannot you cannot receive Medicaid because Planned Parenthood also provides abortions in other places. So, and what they are saying to people who come and testify is they're saying the Planned Parenthood people who are coming to testify are saying you are going to remove preventive services and cancer screenings and wellness checks from all these organizations where we provide primary care. And what the legislators are saying back is stop providing abortions so you can have the money. So, yeah, those are the exact conversations. And those are really difficult hearings. I think a lot of these will be challenged as far as whether they're constitutional, but I don't know how much trust I put in our Supreme Court and how they'll rule on these. I mean, the constitutional amendment was very clear about not impeding on reproductive rights, and taking away all funding is impeding. So we also have another bill looking at a 24-hour waiting period. Even though we currently have one on the books that's caught up in court, we're just doing another one. So there, I don't know how many of these there is a true momentum to get through, and how many of these are red meat media things for their people to get attention. Like I don't know, but if they're really intending to get these through and have them held up in court, or if they're intending just to get media attention on them. But they are absolutely having hearings and Medicaid on these. Yeah, we need pushback big time.
Rachel, maybe you should leave us on a high note, which I know you can do, with your eyes closed. Maybe you can help other folks understand what the big deal was on Tuesday night in Anderson Township with the school board and the township trustees. Because it's
All
a
right.
big deal.
Yeah, you want to get in a good mood? So Anderson Township, which when I moved here in 2001, I remember I took my kids to like down the street, and there was the big street parade on 4th of July, and we clapped, and there was like all this crazy stuff going by. And then I remember seeing EDC on a little sign, and there was like Bonnie Dunkelman and maybe 2 other people, like 3 people with the East Side Democratic Club, and they were walking with a sign, and we were like, whoa, yeah, like we just moved here. My kids are like, why are you cheering for those little ladies? I'm like, those are our people. In the last Anderson parade, I think the East Side Democratic Club was a couple hundred people. It was the biggest float that went through. So that was one good sign. But the second good sign was on Tuesday, we had an election where Democrats won 2 of our 2 open trustee seats, unseating 12-year Republican incumbent, and we won 3 school board seats. So now we have our board, which was anti-diversity day, anti-CRT, all these things. There was a mural that was up that students painted that showed acceptance of everyone. They actually went in and white wall painted it out. So our old school board was a little extreme. We now have 5 Democrats on our school board. We flipped the entire school board. Anderson Township flipped blue for the first time ever. It's been a big section of my district, and it was how I was able to win, because other areas carried me a little, and I got Anderson to be a little closer, not to be as bad, but I never have flipped it until this year. Our locals flipped it. So, and we've seen that other places in the suburban areas around some of the cities. I think Cheviot, Westchester, Mason.
Also, yeah.
Yeah, so we're seeing, people are getting tired of what's going on, so we just have to keep people engaged, keep talking to people, not let people check out, find the hope in these places. I honestly have to believe there are more people on the right side of this. It's just that we stopped paying attention for a little bit, myself included. And so we need to engage back in and right this ship, and I think we're going to with what we saw in this last election. So I'm super excited about 26. I have an opponent already. Karen has an opponent already, so people are coming against us. But after this last election, I'm feeling good.
I wanted to mention, I think some people have looked at the red cards over there. those are the citizens' rights, the rights that people have when they're approached by ICE. They're printed on one side in English, one side in Spanish. I also this week have the Whistlemania kits. I don't know if anybody's heard that. That's happening in Chicago. They're pushing back on ICE. And you can wear, if you're in a neighborhood where you see immigrants on the streets or you know they're your neighbors, you might take one, wear the whistle, they will know you're supportive of them, and you can read the little instruction sheet in there that tells you how to notify people in general when you see ICE or suspected ICE, since they don't always identify themselves, in a neighborhood where you think people might need to know. I have more of those kits if anybody wants to take them.